the eighth seed right now in the West, so they're not out of it. But now, talk about coming full circle and kind of going back to your roots. We all know Flip Saunders, one of the greatest, if not the greatest coach in this franchise's history. And now his son takes over, 32 years old, got his first win yesterday. Team was super energized afterwards. You can kind of see the excitement if you saw the video all over social media. And like we mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show, Andrew Wiggins, a guy that I always harp on for being super inconsistent. Maybe this is the guy that can finally tap into the skill set of Andrew Wiggins. 40 points. I mean, he was really involved in that game last night.
Oh, 100%. I mean, he was 16 for 18 from the free throw line. So, clearly he was being aggressive. You don't shoot 18 free throws and you're not being aggressive taking the ball to the basket. But it really was good to see, him doing that. And it was good to see, his son, or Flip Saunders' son, Ryan Saunders. It was good to see him get that first win. And like you said, that video of them after the game, it was just awesome. They gave him the ball. I mean, they were dumping the water on him. I mean, it was just,
yeah, cool.
It was just a memorable moment. I mean, we saw Flip and what he was able to do with the many franchises that he played for, and he clearly was one of the best there in Minnesota, though.
Yeah, and like you said too, man, it's got to be cool to know that you were. I mean, Ryan Saunders was raised around the Timberwolves organization, so to be able to be the head coach of a place where your father coached at, took that team to the playoffs when they had Kevin Garnett, Latrell Sprewell, some of those early 2000 teams they had. It had to be a very cool moment for him. Bittersweet that his father was not there to watch him do it, I'm sure. But at the same time, those guys like Andrew Wiggins, Karl-Anthony Towns, the guys you've driven in practice for the last couple of years, now you're in that head chair. First game, you get a win. And like I said, if he can somehow find a spark and turn a switch on Andrew Wiggins, suddenly the Minnesota Timberwolves become a very interesting team. That's not a bad roster, a bad lineup at all.
No, absolutely not. And one name we didn't mention. And, the All-Star voting came out. Who was one of the names from that squad that they were talking about? Derrick Rose. You forget Derrick Rose. You really can't forget he's on that team. But, we talk so much about Karl-Anthony Towns and Wiggins that Derrick Rose is still there. I mean, we've
having
seen
a phenomenal year.
Right, he had 50 points earlier in the year. I mean, he's one of those guys that, he's a veteran at this point in his career. And, he's out there helping keep everybody together. And, yeah, Minnesota's not doing so great as far as, record-wise. But I mean, they're a team that they've got enough talent. They can turn it around. This might be that turnaround at the mid-season point. They might get that turnaround and be able to fight back in the Western Conference.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. And of course, in our continued effort not to be a biased podcast, we got to talk about all news. The Monstars, aka the Golden State Warriors, now are talking about Boogie Cousins being back maybe around January 18th. So now a team that has Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, and a pretty solid bench now adds a 7-foot monster in the post in Cousins. And you have to remember, too, DeMarcus Cousins, his last season or two with Sacramento, was kind of developing a three-point shot. I'm not saying he's going to come out there and shoot Steph Curry like threes, but he's not a guy that can only get the ball in the post and only back you down. He has a little bit of a mid-range game. He can take it even further outside if need be. So just when you think the Warriors can't get any better, they're thinking about adding DeMarcus Cousins now back from injury. Kind of, what's your thoughts, Pat, on how they're gonna get him into the flow of the team? I mean, are they going to be able to? Do you see them flipping styles? What I mean by that is kind of picking how they want to attack you. Some games are they going to be giving the ball to him in the post. Some games are they going to keep on playing the way they play now, where they shoot, and Boogie's going to have to get his points when and where he can. How do you see that thing kind of working out?
Well, I think coming back from that Achilles injury, I think it's going to take a while for him to get fully back into the game. They're clearly not going to give him the ball in the post 20 times a game or anything like that. They're not going to work him in there like that. That's just not the style of offense that they have. And they have too many shooters on that team. Klay Thompson, Durant. I mean,
we know the roster.
We know the name. Right, we know the roster. We know the name. But, I was looking at it, and since 2013-14 season, Boogie Cousins, 22 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. I mean, that's pretty solid numbers for a guy. And we're talking about right now about a guy maybe coming off the bench for a while. We don't know if he's necessarily going to start right off the bat. But I had to look at the roster. And had he have not been injured and just come to the team or whatever, clearly we know where he'd be. But the guys that we had starting in the position. These are the guys that he's going to be taking basically their minutes, taking their spot. Because they had the injury to Damian Jones, I think he's got a pectoral injury on December 1st, so it looks like it's season ending. So we got Jordan Bell and we got Kayvon Looney. They've both actually played pretty well. I'm not putting them down at all, but they're not superstars. They're not all-stars.
Not by any means.
They're good at what they do. They get rebounds. They play good defense, and clearly you've seen it a couple times with some of the highlights. They're going to get some alley-oop dunks, and that's where it is. I'll tell you one thing.
They're good role players.
Right, great role players. Now here's the thing, and this is what I thought was funny, is they're missing JaVale McGee right now. Because JaVale McGee was that defensive guy in the back end, and when they got rid of him, and then we're waiting on Boogie to come back, I think they would have been better off keeping him. So anyway, so you got Kayvon Looney, 6'9". This year he's averaging 7 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block a game. Only playing, he only started 18 games and has averaging 20 minutes a game. You got Jordan Bell, also a power forward, 6'9". Only started 1 game, is averaging 11 minutes a game. And this is, they're getting Boogie Cousins to replace that. I mean, clearly we know that he's one of those guys. He's an all-star. He's a superstar. He's somebody that can definitely change the way the game is played for that team. But man, we talk about how good they are every day, and to think about, okay, cool, these guys are going to go out and you're going to take that spot. I mean, it's crazy to think what they could, as you said, become the Monstars, which is clearly what their thought process was signing him. So I'm excited. I've always been a Boogie guy. We talked about him in our podcast back a couple year or so ago. We talked about some of the crazy stats that he was putting up for a while. I mean, he was putting up Oscar Robin-esque numbers. We're getting him back, and it's going to be fun. January 18th, is that what they said?
Yeah, so that's the target that they're talking about, getting him back. And I mean, the rich get richer. We'll have to see what the rest of the Western Conference can do. But like you said at the beginning of your take, it's going to take this guy a while to get back to the rhythm. I mean, Achilles injury is a serious injury, not something to play with. Everybody reacts different. I mean, Kobe Bryant, I believe, had that injury. Dominique Wilkins came back from it. And I believe the first season Neek came back, averaged like almost 25 points a game. Not to mention the fact he's going to have to get acclimated to Golden State. But the one thing I will say is he's a basketball guy, DeMarcus Cousins. I'm sure all this time on the bench he's been watching their games and kind of seeing where he could fit in, where he could pick his spots. So I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't take him very long to kind of figure out his role, figure out where he fits in, and plug himself in and be a factor.
Absolutely. I mean, his game is built for their style of play. Yeah, he's a big guy, but he can shoot. He can pass. He really can. He's a very, very good passer. And it's just, I think he's a perfect fit for that team. How long it's going to take to really make it work and to actually meld together, we'll see. But man, it's scary to think if they're going into the postseason and he's on that roster, and Durant and Curry and Draymond.
I'm excited for him and Draymond's tempers.
And Jerebko's been playing good too.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that roster. That roster is stacked.
I'm excited to see him and Draymond Green's tempers. A lot of technical fouls, man. That's the only hope you have, man.
That's
you
true.
need to get under him and Draymond's skin. Hope you get double T on both and get them out, and then you got to execute. I mean, like I said, though, they are the Monstars, so we'll have to see. But it's good to see. You always want to see a great basketball player perform at a high level and be healthy. So kudos to Boogie Cousins for getting that rehab done and getting back to the swing of things. Definitely going to be interesting to see what he can do. One team I want to talk about, too, that's been performing pretty well, a lot higher than people expected, and you and I have talked about them a lot off air, but we didn't really give them a lot of love on the show, and that would be the Nets, man, of Brooklyn. This is a team we did not expect a lot from. I mean, currently, right now, they're in 7th place in the Eastern Conference at 20-22, but the Brooklyn Nets have been playing really, really good basketball, better than what we expected, for sure. I mean, they're led, of course, by Kenny Atkinson. That's their coach. You're having a great season from D'Angelo Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie as a really good player, and a super side note. Talk about going off track, but I'm going to say it anyway. For those of y'all who have not done it yet, you got to take a look at Spencer Dinwiddie's shoes. They're awesome. It's like some kind of like either California or Japanese company that makes your shoes. They're kind of expensive, but nobody has shoes like this, from the colors to the styles. But that's the sneakerhead in me. For another time, different conversation. But definitely check out my man's kicks. They're pretty fly. But everything that's happening with the Brooklyn Nets, the person I'm most happy for on that team is D'Angelo Russell. This is a guy that was highly touted out of Ohio State, drafted by the Lakers. Laker fans have visions of Magic Johnson Jr. and like a lot of guys that come out of college early and a lot of players in any kind of sport, struggled a little bit. High expectations, didn't reach him. He gets traded to Brooklyn. Career reset, life reset. Here we are playing in Brooklyn, season number 2, career highs in points, definitely a lot of leadership. Still Mr. Ice Water in his veins with at least, if not 2, maybe 3 game-winning shots this season. So that's one of those teams that I've just been interested to watch them perform is the Brooklyn Nets, and definitely happy to see D'Angelo Russell starting to fulfill some of that potential we saw come out of OSU.
Oh, clearly. I mean, we've talked about them earlier this season about they could be that dark horse to squeeze in that 8th spot in the Eastern Conference. I mean, you look at their roster, like you said, you see what they got. I mean, they've had a couple of games recently where they did pretty well. They're not really getting blown out. Last year, talk about the Nets. Every game, they're getting blown out. This year, yeah, they lost the Celtics 116-95, but they beat the Bulls 117-100. They beat the Grizz 109-100. I mean, they're putting up Pelicans. They put up 126 points, 126-121. I mean, they are putting up points. That guy Dinwiddie, I mean, he played right into it. And he got that big contract. They signed him. They're looking good. I mean, clearly they're not, the 76ers. They're not the Warriors with the All-Stars and with, the roster that they built. But for the roster that they have, they're all getting it together. And man, that guy Allen. I mean, we've seen
Jared
the highlights.
Jared Allen
We've
blocks.
seen the highlights.
He'll block your mother, your grandmother, you, whoever.
He looks like that guy when you go out and you're playing street ball or something like that. You're out there and you see this big guy out there with the afro and the headband out there, just dunking on people like crazy. Like, I don't care, like I said, I don't care if you're my grandma, I don't care if you're my best friend. I'm going to put you down on the ground, I'm going to dunk on you, I'm going to back you down, and you're not going to stop me. And that's the kind of game that he has.
Yeah, and it's a lot more than just those highlight blocks. And you and I were talking a little before we started the show about who our defensive player of the year so far would be. And that's a guy that a lot of people would think, well, he's only had 4 highlight blocks. That's all you see on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. If you really watch the Brooklyn Nets play and you watch the kind of defense this guy has, he's locking cats up, man, game in and game out. So a name to keep in your ear as far as defensive player of the year. But yeah, I just wanted to give some kudos definitely to the Brooklyn Nets and how they've been playing so far this season. You and I talk about it all the time. I've said it a lot, and I'm going to keep on saying it. When it comes to technology, social issues, being ahead of the curve, I challenge anyone to tell me a league that's more on top of it than the NBA. So once again, the NBA comes out today letting everybody know they have a live streaming deal with Twitter. When you go on NBA on TNT, you go to that account on Twitter, 20 games in the second half you can watch however you want to. And what I mean by that is you can watch the game with a single player ISO camera. How do you figure out who that player is going to be? It's voted on Twitter. What's that do? Interaction. Jesus, the hashtag NBA Twitter now is a thing. I mean, there's like 27 million people, I think I read, that follow the NBA on Twitter right now. That's unbelievable compared to baseball, football, soccer. But that's more interaction. That's more fans online watching your game. And the thought that you can kind of vote on LeBron James, and let's say LeBron James wins. So the second half of a Lakers playoff game, there's an ISO camera devoted just to LeBron James. That's really, really cool. Something that no other sports league that I know of is doing. So once again, Adam Silver and those guys at the NBA office is just thinking ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it so interactive. Like you said, you can watch that one player, and of course, basketball, it's 5-on-5. You're not like watching a football game where you got 11-on-11, you got guys in the trenches, you got guys running this way, running that way, all the way down the field or anything like that. You just can look at one. No, with this, I mean, there's so much going on so close together, and to be able to, like you said, to just stick with LeBron James or Harden, watching some of these step backs that he's been knocking down lately, or these crossovers where he crossed over Jamal Murray against the other day.
R.I.P. Jamal Murray.
Right,
but to Jamal Murray's credit, he came back that next night and he dunked on somebody. All the frustration from Harden.
No, absolutely. So I love it. I mean, I love it to get the fans all together. Like you said, voting on Twitter. You can every night it can be a different person. it's just gonna be fun to watch because I want to check it out. I mean, I'm clearly gonna check it out. If I'm
Yeah, no,
a
I am
basketball
too.
fan.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of fans you find online is crazy. I mean, you just type in that hashtag NBA Twitter, and you'll find like 30 people that are probably either the fans of the same team you like or player that you like, and that community is really, really cool. It's a unique community. I know the NFL and baseball and hockey